picture, or even take a good close look at it. And it broke your heart to see how it had been so important, from the feeling of the steering wheel to the rubber on the road. Now it's grown to unrealistic proportions in your mind. Just go back, even for a minute, you can forget, and you don't even know what it was you lost. You always feel so empty in spite of all you had. Were those feelings you remember even real? And were they honestly about some junky old falcon or any other thing that you could own? Now it's all so stale, and you feel so very old, like you've taken all your chances and tossed them on the side for some stupid piece of metal, like shining bits of trash that line the stolen nest of a greedy neighborhood crow. Back to your hometown to visit with your past, but nothing looks the same anymore. And you can see all that you squandered when you were shining all that chrome. You were handed all you needed without cost, but you were too blind to see it, and you took it all for granted. Now you want to complain. Tell me just what it was that you lost. Start to panic, and your gas is running low, and you need to find some meaning before you're stranded on the road. And when the engine finally dies near a soybean field at dusk, you just sit and watch the sunset turn the entire sky to rust. Turn the entire sky to rust. Turn the entire sky to rust. Thank you. That's called The Last of the Better Days Ahead. This is Spider John Kerner's guitar.
That you are.
No, it still is, but I'm taking care of it now. All right, this is called The Last of the Better Days Ahead. And bear with me with my thing here. I got painter's tape like all over everything. What I was thinking. My uncle worked in a fabrication shop, a tiny place stuffed with machines and noise and smoke, where they made whatever anybody wanted out of metal. He drove a 1968 Ford Custom, a former police car, which had seen all of its best days go by around 65,000 miles ago and was packed to the headrests with garbage except for the driver's seat. Its multiple layers of paint and primer, unsanded bondo and rust, told its story like rings in a tree trunk. Each of the four wheels had a different tire, and the front left one was a snow tire and slightly larger than the rest. The exhaust system ended just shortly after beginning at the manifold, a ragged bit of pipe hanging more or less straight down from the engine, an asthmatic straight six, long and greasy, with an ancient oil bath air cleaner perched to one side like a greasy bowler hat. The car was a 3-speed manual, having had a shifter on the steering column, but at some point had been converted to a floor shifter, which was apparently scavenged from a much older pickup truck, and now rose out of the floor at crazy angles to nearly the top of the dashboard, and had to be given much encouragement and accommodation in order for it to work properly. The rough-hewn hole in the floor hadn't been finished, and you could see the road clearly alongside the transmission. The trunk had very little floor left at all, and the spare tire, of an entirely different make from any of the other Mitchmaster tires, was held in its place by several bungee cords and was probably flat anyway. There was no radio, there was no air conditioner or working heater, no power steering, and the window crank on the passenger side was missing and had been replaced with a vice grip's pliers. There was a plastic dinosaur on the dashboard among the trash and a bumper sticker on the back bumper that read, "Jesus loves you." I worked in a gas station at night. No one came in at night. We had no convenience store or mechanic or even a pop machine, just gas and cigarettes, and both of those were priced slightly higher than the station across the street, which guaranteed that I'd have plenty of time during my shift to sit and watch the cars go in and out of that other gas station, and then watch the sunrise from the back of the building before my boss came to take the next shift. One night around 1 o'clock a.m., my uncle drove into the station, his car backfiring and belching blue smoke. He wanted $4 worth of gas. And after I pumped the gas, he said, "Let's go for a ride, get something to eat." And I shut the pumps off and locked the door to the little hut where we kept the plastic display case filled with cigarettes, an uncomfortable plastic chair, and a safe embedded into the floor. I was hungry. We drove out of town, passing all of the open restaurants and fast food chains lining the state highway that cut our town in half. I was sitting with my knees up, my feet resting on a solid surface of unrecognizable muddy garbage, the pliers sticking out of the door and into my side, holding my face toward the open window to avoid breathing the exhaust and burning oil coming up through the floor. My uncle kept up a steady patter, but I couldn't tell what he said over the roar of the engine. At some point, a piece of paper flew from the back seat and wrapped itself around the back of my head, causing me to startle and drive the pliers deeper into my side. After about 10 minutes, we turned off the highway and onto a gravel road, and then after another half mile, my uncle steered the car onto a rutted field road and stopped. The ticking of the engine and the ensuing quiet was all that I could hear, and the headlights only showed a tightly planted field of sweet corn gathered directly in our path and seeming to lean into us as if they were curious about us, asking why we had come. Or maybe we'd been here all along and they were the ones who had just arrived, walking tentatively out of the dark night on high wiry routes to find us here waiting for them. The darkness and silence were both made from the same piece of dense material, insisting their presence on the weak headlight beams and the ever-diminishing sounds coming from under the hood. I hugged my knees to my chest and sunk further into the filthy seat, hoping that the darkness would swallow me whole, hoping that my uncle would simply shut the headlights off and get out of the car and walk away, leaving me to become part of the dense material and disappear into it, letting it surround me and absorb me, insulating me against everything, and eventually devouring me entirely into its comforting atmosphere. But then my uncle jumped out of the car, which thankfully didn't have a working interior light, and laughing, he sliced a white gash into the darkness and a flashlight and popped the hood, saying, "Here, let me show you something," while he shone his light into the engine compartment. The door handle was missing too, and I had to reach out the window and open my door from the outside. He was shining the flashlight on a sheet metal box that had been fastened to the single 6-cylinder exhaust manifold. It was as long as the manifold itself and just a bit wider, with a lid and hinges that my uncle had made himself. I couldn't see how it had been fastened down. "Let's pick some corn," my uncle declared, and he strode off towards the first row and began inspecting the plants for good ears. My feet sunk into the soil around the base of the corn plants. I couldn't see anything around me, and the weird fingers of the corn leaves were sticky and irritating against my bare arms. I felt around until I found a couple of mature ears and pulled them straight down and off the stalk, turning to stare through the plants to find the dying headlights of my uncle's car, and I stomped back to the open engine compartment, my shoes heavy with mud. We pulled the floss from the ears, and my uncle poured water from a gallon jug onto the corn and wrapped them back in their husks and placed them inside the box. "I put this together today," he was saying, "and these motors run pretty hot." Threw the cigarette clamped between his teeth while he poured more water into the box and shut the lid. The rest of what he said was drowned out by the engine as we backed out onto the road and started out again. I nodded at him occasionally and said, "Yeah, while he talked, and I tried to get my shoes free of the field mud and garbage, which were making them at least 3 sizes larger than they actually were, and we rode aimlessly along the county roads around town for another 30 minutes to let the corn heat up, circling our town completely, then half again, to get back to the gas station where there was a car parked at a pump and an elderly man standing next to it staring into its digital display. "Is this on?" the old man asked me after the Ford's engine had stopped. I had told him no, and went to the little building to turn the pumps back on just as he was getting back into his car to drive across the street to the other station. I was stepping out of the little building when my uncle yelled, "You got a tongs?" There was steam coming out from under the hood of the car, and he was trying to open the little metal box with his flannel shirt wrapped around his hand.